The city of Oshkosh, Wisconsin is filled with a long, rich history. Oshkosh Public Museum holds many documents detailing various individuals and ways of life throughout the years. To find out about these records, the Oshkosh Public Museum has an extensive archival collection to scour from. Archives are a historian's way of approaching people, places, events, and more of the past to gain knowledge. These documents give historians and archivists glimpses into the lives of those who came before us. Through those perspectives, they are able to help create exhibits and store these archival records that give individuals the best information in their research. How do the records shown within the museum allow for so many stories to be told? Archivists like Oshkosh Public Museum's Amy Fels work in the archives to collect, restore, and share these archival documents to give the public the best information on certain subjects. The archives of the museum are an area in which so much history is stored. The archives are a place that people with differing degrees and interests in history can explore. They are also a place for many historians to find and verify information and then share that knowledge with the public. I sat down with Oshkosh Public Museum's archivist, Amy Fels, to discuss the importance of archives, not only in her own life, but in the museum as well. All right, so I am here with Oshkosh Public Museum's archivist, Amy Fels, just to get a better understanding of what the Oshkosh archives are like. So Amy, you have a master's in library and information sciences with an archives concentration. What encouraged you to pursue working in archives?
I've always loved history and telling stories, and I decided pretty early on in high school that I wanted to work in museums and archives because I wanted a career where I was able to study and learn and research and work with history, but I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to be a classroom teacher. And so being an archivist is a way to interact with history and also interact with people and create connections and share stories. So I decided fairly early on that I wanted to get a master's degree in history, get a master's degree in library and information studies. It allows me to use my creative and critical thinking skills and my research skills that I gained in my training as a historian, but I also get to use kind of my analytical, organizational brain and those skills that I learned as an information professional. So it's a really good balance and a really good brain workout.
Mm-hmm. That is very cool. So you also did an internship at the Oshkosh Public Museum during your college career? Mm-hmm. All right. So is that kind of what inspired you to apply for the position at Oshkosh Public Museum and start working with them?
Yeah. I had a really positive experience as an intern at the Oshkosh Public Museum, and I think the biggest thing I walked away from that internship was wanting to work at a smaller institution with a closer-knit team where everybody's role is really impactful and you can collaborate with each other and you're not pigeonholed into one little area where you do the same thing every day. And so when the position at OPM opened up, I was so excited to be able to apply for it and was really grateful that I was able to come back as a full-time staff member. It felt very much like a homecoming and a new adventure all at once.
Yeah, that is really cool. So you said kind of no 2 days are the same when working in the archives there. But what do your daily tasks consist of?
So on a weekly basis, I often receive a number of different reproduction requests for images or documents, information requests, so I'm doing research for patrons and community members who have questions about things. So those are that's like a smaller daily task that I'm always working on, but then on top of that, I help with exhibition development, programming. I write content for our social media profiles and our membership magazine. So I'm doing a lot of different things at once, and those are kind of some of the front-facing tasks that I do, but then I'm always also engaged in cataloging records, processing collections, making sure that our database is up to date and accurate to be able to share not only with the public what is in the museum's holdings, but also to be able to communicate effectively within the museum and with our curators so that when we're doing exhibition development, everybody kind of has an idea of what we have so that we can build the best exhibits possible.
Yeah, of course. So how does the Oshkosh Public Museum's archival records compare to that of other museums that you've been at or worked at?
Yeah, I think as a local history institution and having experience in other like similarly sized museums or smaller historical societies, you find a lot of the same types of records in these institutions, like local photographs, city histories, diaries and papers from prominent business people. But I think what makes Oshkosh unique and special is the wealth of materials that we have. Our archives is really quite large and prolific for a museum and a staff of the size that we do have. And we have some really remarkable people in Oshkosh history that we are able to hold their archival material for. People like suffragist Jessie Jack Hooper or the artist Helen Farnsworth Mears, who we have an exhibit on right now. And small, like photographers like Effie Howlett, who was really quite a prolific female photographer for her time when there weren't a lot of female photographers. So I think the unique thing is that we have a lot of really special things to Oshkosh, but at the same time, because we have materials that you can find similar types of across institutions, it also shows how integrated and how connected Oshkosh is as a city to just general history or its place in Wisconsin history. It's all, everything, a lot of it is the same and all of it is unique. And so I think that's one of the really cool things about working in local history is you can see what makes a place special and how it's connected to everything else.
Yeah. So your last answer will kind of help answer this one, but how can archives help individuals discover some of the lost voices of history? Yeah,
I think one of the reasons, and probably the reason that archives are so important is because it keeps these stories from being lost. My job is to preserve and protect and make accessible these stories of Oshkosh history and the Lake Winnebago region's history. And so as long as somebody's coming by and asking the questions, if we have the resources for it, then that story is not lost. And so I think at its core, my job is really to make sure that if people have questions, we're collecting the resources that can potentially help them answer them.
Yeah. So the Oshkosh Public Museum, you guys do a great job of highlighting different voices of minority groups, particularly Native Americans. That was very interesting to see all of your Native American work. Are there any other minority voices that you wish you guys had more records of? So any more like BIPOC or LGBTQ plus individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a conversation we've been having in recent months. We absolutely want to increase the diversity of our collections from our African American community, the queer community, other ethnic groups or other marginalized people who have historically been excluded from academic history, archival institutions. So it's definitely something we are taking active steps towards collecting. The other thing we're looking into is collecting records that are from after 1950. The city's history is really well documented in our archives between like roughly 1850 and 1950, just that post-World War II era.
Yeah.
The newer things we have significantly less of because people are still holding them. They're still their own records. They're still their parents' or their grandparents' papers that they're still holding on to, or photographs and things like that. But at the same time, those are really valuable time periods, and a lot of social change and a lot of historical events happened post 1950 that we are really interested in filling those gaps in our collections so that not only can we start telling those stories, but that way future generations have access to those materials as well.
Yeah. Of course. And then that way people know not to just throw those things out once.
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you think the museum does well in terms of like highlighting your archives department and using your archives department for like public access?
Yeah, I think so. First, archives are really vital to our exhibition development, whether it's through things like research or showcasing original materials or when we reproduce photographs to create large displays. the archives are everywhere you look in the museum. And I think one of the things that we've been talking about in the last several months is how we can highlight the treasures of the archives even more through different photo exhibits or archive-specific exhibits. The other thing, too, is that we highlighted a lot through things like our social media posts. We highlight a lot of archival content there. And then one of the important ways that we offer access to the public to be able to see what we have in our archives is through our online photo catalog. One of the tricky things with archives is providing access, finding a balance between providing access and maintaining the long-term preservation of our archival materials. So being able to showcase what we hold in our archives through online platforms and exhibits is a really valuable way for the public to kind of gain insight into what we have. And then they can always contact me for more information, and that's how we help kind of continue that conversation.
Yeah. And then to just go on a little bit more with that, so do you wish more people knew about the archives at the Oshkosh Public Museum? And then, if so, how can we help spread the word that Oshkosh Public Museum does have an archives department that's so amazing? Yeah,
well, I think, of course, we want people to know that we have an archives because it's a public resource. We don't collect materials to hold them and not let anybody ever have access to them. The point is we want to make sure that they're accessible for generations to come. And I think the tricky thing is archives they're not like a public library where people can just come in and browse our materials because they are so special and require special care. But, we're a public resource and we want researchers and community members to utilize what we have and our staff expertise. And we try really hard to maintain a good balance of being able to allow people access to our materials while also taking in mind that they need to be well taken care of and can only handle so much human handling. So I think, again, things like online access, exhibits, programming where we get to share more archival stories, more in-depth that you might not be able to get just walking through an exhibit. I think those are all really good ways for people to kind of learn what's in our archives. And then if they have questions and are curious, we want to be a spark to increase archival awareness and just all of the treasures that we hold, because we really do hold them for the community.
Yeah. And then for my final question to people curious about the archives at the Oshkosh Public Museum and to those interested in pursuing a degree in library and information sciences with archive concentrations, what would you say to them?
Reach out. I love my job. People in my field, we are really passionate about our work, and we love getting to share that with the community. That's part of the reason that we get into this field, is because we like connecting with people and sharing stories and learning. So reach out. We're here, for the community. We're here for you to answer questions. Get involved. We're a lot of local museums and local historical societies. They're always looking for volunteers and interested, dedicated community members. And for students who are looking to get into the museum or archives field, chase your curiosity. The museum field is tricky and can sometimes be difficult to get into. But part of what makes it so special is because everybody who wants to be there really wants to be there. And so if it's something you're passionate about, just chase it as far as you can go. I mean, I decided, I think at 15 or 16, that I wanted to work in archives, and I just kept chasing that, and it worked out incredibly well for me, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. And I consider my position it's a big responsibility, but it's one that I'm very privileged to carry, and I would love to be able to foster that kind of passion and curiosity and success in the museum field for future professionals.
Yes, well, that is a beautiful answer, so thank you.
Thank you.
And I was glad I had this opportunity to reach out and talk with you.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked for this conversation. I think it's a wonderful idea, and it's really important.